radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Good evening, Fade to Black. Today is Tuesday, December 12th, 2023. Let's do this, man. Yeah. Very excited about tonight's show, and you can help support everything that we do right now. All of our hard work. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. Everything is signed. It includes shipping. There are two different shirts, two different ways to get them. The links are below. Get yourself a Game Changer membership today. The links are below. All right. Now, also, the live stream, the files, the videos of Stairway to the Stars is now available for you. If you couldn't attend the conference, you've got everything available. You won't be able to say that you missed something. Everything is there. It's just $111 for over 100 hours of viewing. The link for that is below. Head over to Stairway to the Stars, and you can check everybody out, including tonight's guest. Doctors JJ and Desiree Hurtak are with us. I'm very excited about tonight's show. I've called this show Sacred Sites Around the World because they have been everywhere. And these two, I can't say enough, these are two of my most favorite people in the world. They know that. I tell that. I can't stop saying it to them, how much I appreciate not only their research, but the way that they have shared it with the world over the years. It helped me set my path and my journey right to this show. They are social scientists. They are archaeologists. They are founders of the Academy for Future Science. That is an international NGO. Doctors Hertaks have researched ancient sites around the world and were principal members of the expedition that discovered the tomb of Osiris in 1997 on the Giza Plateau using ground-penetrating radar. They've been to every site. When it comes to archaeology, when it comes to the big stuff, when it comes to rocks and discovery, they are who I turn to. Now, I have said this many times over the years, but I'm going to say it again right now. My best stuff is stolen from the Hertaks. That's right. Their websites are keysofenoch.org and futurescience.org. The links for everything are below. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Dr. JJ and Dr. Desiree Hurtak. There they are right there. What's going on, kids?
Thank you so much. And we're ready to go. And we also acknowledge the great work that you've done in Peru, that you've done in Göbekli Tepe and all over. We obviously preceded you by a few years. And now the package is being tied together. All of our teamwork worldwide recognizes we're just beginning to open up the back door to history.
Right, but I think we're going to start with Egypt, right, Jimmy? Because you just got back from there, we just got back from there, and it's really one of the most exciting places, I think, on the planet.
Yeah, no doubt. And you know, we can start anywhere. Egypt is a good place to start. Can I make one comment about that, though? Egypt, and this is kind of my takeaway. We all love Egypt, and we're so familiar with, the cover of Time magazine and King Tut's gold mask and the significant Boris Karloff and whatever, right? We're all familiar with Egypt for our own reasons. And I think we're all connected, as well through our DNA and past lives, with Egypt. And I get that. And when you go to Egypt, it's everywhere you look is something like crazy old. And I love that. Cairo, 5,000 years old. That's insane to me. But Peru, coming back from Peru is not dissimilar from Egypt. It's everywhere you look as well. And Egypt is unique in that area. You know, you have Iraq and Turkey and Petra and Jordan. I get that. And Lebanon, Baalbek. Yes. But it's really Egypt that's got everything, and Peru and South America is also unique because it's not like that in Chile or Argentina or Venezuela or Colombia or Brazil or Paraguay or Uruguay or Ecuador. It's Bolivia, but Bolivia only because it's an imaginary border, right? That's a modern thing, and so. It's really strange how Peru has got this concentration of craziness. And then you've got Mexico and Guatemala and Honduras with the Mayans and the Aztecs and things. But Peru is unique, and so is Egypt. I'm not too far off in that assessment, am I?
No, actually, we agree with you wholeheartely because it's like who built the pyramids, right? Well, or even the area of Tiahuanaco in Bolivia. It had to be really an ancient civilization. And you and I and Dr. Hurtak, of course, have worked with Muhammad, who actually places the pyramid back 36,000 years ago.
Muhammad Ibrahim.
In the Great Pyramid of Egypt. And we believe that's true also for Bolivia. I'll call Bolivia because that's really the start of it, but also Peru, that probably people from Mu. In fact, we did a video that's out there on YouTube actually called The Temple of Mu, and it shows like a migration. And now even to look at the North American people are looking at migration probably from the Pacific. Asia and into South America. So for any of the North and South North American or South American continent, it would have been probably Peru, Bolivia as the landing point. And I believe that's true also for Egypt. So basically, maybe the same people brought these really structures to our notice right now.
So what
let me comment on that. And JJ, I just interrupted you, brother. I'm sorry about that. But let me comment on that because we're talking about two different continents and thousands of miles and years apart, right? Well, when you go and you visit, like I did Egypt 1 month and Peru the next month, right? I mean, back to back. And you can't help but just stand back and go, there's some similarities here, when you see it back to back, and until you see it with your own eyeballs, you don't necessarily make that assessment. But there are similarities, aren't there?
Absolutely. And I was going to say one of my projects years ago was to look at the linguistic similarity between the Plains Indians and those of the Southwest, the Hopi, the Zuni, the Navajo, and the language families of Central Asia next to the Gobi Desert, and they're very similar. In fact, we have a young colleague that was here in the States, and he was tracing his genetic ancestry.
Right.
And
he's a Uyghur, and he did that ancestry.com. And they said like 60% of your ancestry is North American. He had never, and none of his family had ever been to North America. I said, look, you got to really tell, the researchers about this, that Uyghur people actually have U.S., we'll say Native American genes. It's amazing. So we've had this cross correlation. So it's not maybe always the Pacific. Some of the people going to Egypt, maybe it come from Central Asia. Actually, the Keys of Enoch, which Dr. Hurtak is famous for, says that the very first Ur civilization actually took place in the Taklamakan Basin, which is just north of the Himalayas, and that was the original place. And then when Mu collapsed, and ultimately when Atlantis collapsed, and we think it was sequential in that way, that then the Great Pyramid was founded, and places like Bolivia, Tiahuanaco.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point. Let me ask you guys this. Now, I'm going to share a little bit of our private conversations, but the audience needs to hear them because this is what's on my mind. I want to back up. Let's back up a few decades here. When I started watching and following and reading you guys, I was not only blown away, but you guys were stepping way outside of the box back then, away from conventional archaeology and some of the orthodox lanes that you have to stay in. The two of you you guys just took a left-hand turn, drove off the road, and decided you were going to, follow the knowledge and follow the data. What was it back then that clicked? Because you guys went on your own journey. Can you take me back to that moment? Was it a rock? Was it a cave? Was it a megalithic structure? Was it something as simple as the Great Pyramid? What got you guys off of the freeway?
It was a flash of light, and I didn't blink.
Right.
Dr. Hurtak had a unique experience.
I was teaching anthropology and Oriental science at one of the state universities of California, and I realized, talking to my students, I could not explain what was behind myths, the whole concept of light beings. Beings we would call avatars or Mahavatars in the Sanskrit tradition, the Oriental traditions. And I began to search for deeper answers. And of course, having musical talent and background, I began to evoke the mantras, the names of the supreme, the names of the master teachers. And in so doing, I came upon this one name, which we call phonetically Yod-He, Vod-He, which is the supreme one in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And at that point, a flash took place. I found myself in another dimension, and I received mental scenarios or scenario abstracts, which I then wrote down carefully, outlined, and that suggested that there was a bigger roadmap behind Mother Earth, that we were a schoolhouse for the consciousness we call the soul.
And so actually what he saw was past, present, and future. So you're talking, and we're talking tonight a lot about the past. And in actuality, he saw that the first real, we'll say, species of ours, which was male and female, actually came and set up housing in the area just north of the Himalayas, in that area. And then, of course, the planet goes through various cyclic changes, so that civilizations that emerged had to go through cataclysm and then come back again. And, this ties in, and I know all your audience is just, loves that stuff, even to Elizabeth Clark, who had an ET experience in South Africa.
Before you go that far, what I am suggesting here is that the roadmap showed areas of early communication with cosmic intelligence. We will call them connecting points or vortex points, where higher intelligence came down momentarily and built structures we call now chronometers or time measuring devices.
So the Great Pyramid is one of those time measuring devices that, of course, and Dr. Hurtak in the Keys of Enoch said, hey, this place points to Orion, and that was in 73 when he wrote that and started talking about it. And of course, the Pleiades is also important, and the Pleiades is connected oftentimes with the Aztec civilization and Orion with the Mayan civilization. We just got back from Mexico also about 10 days ago, and Teotihuacan just about 5 days ago, I think, something like that.
So to put this together in terms of mental pictures, we're far more older as a humanity than we think. And we're now pressing the envelope or pushing the envelope towards recognizing that there's a connecting mathematics, music, and sacred geometry that connects these different places, from Peru to Mexico, Mexico to Egypt, from Egypt to the pyramids in China. All of that is a teaching rubric, a teaching methodology of how we have to grow up, take our baby steps, connect the points of unity, and shove off for the greater universe.
And I just want to say one thing. I know you love to also contribute, but they are also places of initiation. And I think that's important because the theme of tonight's show was initiation. So I don't want to just say there are alignments or there are chrono monitors. One time I was actually in the King's Chamber and there was a bunch of us, Boris Said and other people, and we were meditating. We had like the whole night in the King's Chamber, which they used to give you. And the walls dropped away and I was like sitting out there in the stars. And what's interesting about that, a friend of mine 3 years later had a similar experience. And then we did something on Gaia TV called Deep Space. And Sid Goldberg, the producer, actually put someone else in connected with our talking in general, and he had the exact same experience. So these places just really augment the mind. We think it actually takes you into like an alpha state because of the frequencies that are there, especially when you do chanting.
So we've been able to.
Hold on. See, I know you guys so well. I need to rope you in sometimes. Okay, so let's stop for a second. Let's go back. JJ, you made a comment that light went off and you didn't blink. But the question's not to you; it's to Desiree. Were you two together when the light happened?
No, actually, it was 1973, and I knew him. I was 2 years old. I always tell people, but anyway, but he was my professor at the time. And when he came back, he actually had put all this stuff together, and he was starting to teach what we call the Keys of Enoch. Now, I grew up in Florida, in Miami. That whole area, I had seen UFOs since I was 16, and understood the Bermuda Triangle and all this stuff. So when he started, like, it just shifted his whole reality from his experience. I was one of the few people that understood that. And then
how did you so that's actually my question. Okay, so now I need to interrupt again. Mike, when you found out about this light going off and let's use the word download, this information comes in, did you think he was nuts?
No, actually, the thing is he was gone for 2 days. I knew people who were with him at that time, and they could not find him. And when he came back, he then started writing what he saw. So it was like an interesting.
Right.
And I understood a lot of this stuff because I had a background in it.
And she saw the paranormal light around my body.
So and we also used to have experiences with other students when we would drive in the car late at night, and there would be things that would appear and different scenarios, even light beings at different places. So, it was a confirmation to me, a confirmation to other people. But the bottom line, of course, we don't want to hang too much with the experience. We want to hang with the information. And that's right. What really kept things going for the last, and I hate to say it, it's been 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years. Well, JJ's got to show a picture.
I got to show a picture because words are just words. It's the phenomena, it's the paraphysical light that you see here next to the pyramid in Mexico.
Right.
It looks like a dove, a bird. That is the energy field we're talking about that is produced by acoustical physics. So it is not simply to be by a pyramid or a sacred area. It's the experience to which the biomagnetic field of your body, the mental field of your mind through acoustics, and the greater field of the planetary nexus point, a connecting point, all converge. And so there is a vibratory shift that is so tremendous, you're lucky to get it on film. But if you get it on film, it's a confirmation of what we call a sacred place.
Sure.
Initiation.
Now, so since we're starting with Egypt, I've had a lot of special personal experiences throughout the country, and it's a personal journey. Everybody's going to have a different experience there, and I get that. Mine were at places that we don't need to get into it, but we're outside of the norm. And the first time, because everybody wants to hear these sensational stories, mine were from different locations that nobody's ever heard of. But anyway, the first time I went into the Great Pyramid, I got nothing. Okay, and that's me. Whatever. The second time I went into the Great Pyramid, I was by myself, and pyramid's empty. And I go into the king's chamber. Okay, now I'm going to leave what I did in there is my own business. But this is what happened. So I walked over. So, when you come in the door, right? When you come into the door and the box is on your right. So the wall, that you're facing when you come through the tunnel, right? The wall that you're facing. I go up to that wall after I'm over at the box and I'm doing some stuff. But I turn to the wall and I put my hands on it like I was being frisked by the police. Right? Assuming the position, right? So I lean against it and I put my hands on it. I put my head down and I put my full weight on the wall and just closed my eyes and just had a moment. But this is what happened. I didn't have some grand vision. I'm not going, and even if I did, I wouldn't tell you or say it. It's personal, but friggin' electricity ran through my body. It went through my hands, through my feet, into the floor, and I don't know if I want to use the word vibration because it wasn't like I was doing this, but that feeling. We've all been, stuck your fingers in a light socket, right? We've all had that jolt, and it was like that, and it lasted for about 30 seconds, and then. Whew, man, I put my arms down and I just kind of stood there and went, okay, that was strange. I wouldn't classify it as spiritual, but there's some energy concentrated in that building. That's the only way I can put it.
First of all, of course, the wall itself is the one that points towards Orion because there's that little opening there, which
that's right
at this point. But you got red granite, you got all these energies, and this is one of part of our book, Giza's Industrial Complex, because we feel if you've ever walked up the, and I know you have, but the Grand Gallery. If you look on the sides, there's little indentations, literally, missing sections. Equal on both sides all the way up. And so what was there? We think that actually there was like anodes and cathodes. And if you had water coming up, you actually were producing energy. And we were interested in showing that hydrogen gas could have been produced. But regardless, once you get up to the king's chamber, then yes, that's our book. Then when you get up to the king's chamber, then you're in this red granite area. And there's a lot of pressure, and this is one of the things we talk about in the book. There's a lot of pressure on the stone. Think of how much, even if the whole pyramid isn't totally solid, some people think there's cavities, and there are probably more cavities than we even know about. But there's still a lot of weight on red granite. So just that energy, it's like a crystalline energy, like you get piezoelectric effects in integrated circuits. It's the same idea. So there's energy flowing through there just by the weight of the stones, by the type of stone. And we believe it was totally engineered for producing energy as well.
So years ago, German scientists came out with the cigarette lighter that had a piezoelectric effect. And you think of that being magnified 5,000 times with the pressure on the granite stone, and you get the idea that there is a acoustical frequency that is also produced. And we were able to bring scientists inside the Great Pyramid and catalog and measure these different energy discharges. And of course, this hasn't been published because we wanted to have the opportunity to go back and continue research in Egypt. But at the outset, we were very fortunate through the what I will call the paranormal mental images I had to strike it rich, to actually go down next to the second of the Great Pyramids and find the tomb of Osiris.
Right. So if you do an angle out from one of the sides of the Great Pyramid and then the middle pyramid, you come to an area that's now underground called the tomb of Osiris. And we were there with the Schor Expedition when they first found that on 100 feet down, about 30 meters down, you come to this area that then had a tomb. Now, why would you put a tomb that far down? We believe a lot of the tombs you see, like you've gone to the Serapeum, by that whole area of Saqqara, we think some of it was actually holding technologies. In fact, Muhammad tells the story, and he was our mutual guide there, that a lot of the Serapeum, which were the tombs of the Apis bulls, were broken. And so, maybe a couple had bulls in there and no one knew what was in there, but there was one that was never opened. And some guy about, I guess, 100 years ago or something, decided he's going to do it from the side. And he found white powder. That was the only thing he found inside. Now, some people talk about white powder of gold. I don't know what it was. I would love to know more. But the idea is that they were probably storage devices. We use a similar thing today underneath the ground to store nuclear waste. Now, I'm not saying these are nuclear waste. They could have been gases that were used for technology. And even, now it's so popular. We're talking about hydrogen gas. People actually drink hydrogen water. It's a very popular thing because it helps with health and healing.
So we found the Osiris tomb. Osiris is important because he is the Lord who represents a proto-Christ figure who comes from the stars of Orion, who brings, as it were, the methodology of music, and whose life exemplifies the birth, death, and resurrection cycle. The finding of the tomb of Osiris in 1997, 2 years before it was announced to the world by Zahi Hawass in a Fox television special, to me is a very important watermark.
And actually, I just want to add, in addition to that, so, in addition to these unique tombs, and you've been around there are actually a lot of, I say, and it's been recorded many times, there's more under the ground of Giza, the plateau, than there is even above it.
You can see it. You can see it. You can stand just about anywhere in Giza. And I don't care if you're over at Menkaure, if you're at Khafre, if you're at Khufu, if you're at the Sphinx. It doesn't matter where you are. Just stand and turn. Right? Just stand and turn. You can see stuff sticking out of the sand. And you can just imagine what that plateau would be like if they took a vacuum cleaner to it. And I'm being serious. If I was Bill Gates, I'd vacuum Giza. Okay, can we go back to Osiris for a second? Hold on, JJ.
That's the vacuum cleaner in 1978 before they did the excavations.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would get myself 1,000 Roombas and just let them start vacuuming them up the sand. When if we talk about Zahi, and we don't have, and we won't, but there's nothing to see here anymore. Everything's been discovered. There's nothing here. There's nothing underneath Giza. There's nothing here. There's nothing there. There's nothing in the Great Pyramid. Well, as it turns out, we found at least 2 new ginormous chambers in the Great Pyramid. The Osiris tomb, which is 10 stories deep. It's 100 feet. Most people don't understand how big and how deep the Osiris shaft and tomb is. We've got the tunnels underneath the Giza Plateau itself, starting at the bird tombs, and then we've got what's underneath the Sphinx. And if we listen to Zahi, none of this stuff would have been discovered. Everything would have stopped. There is a lot still to be discovered there. Do you consider the Great Pyramid to be something spiritual, or do you view it as a mechanical device?
I have to say we see it as both, and that's very possible. You were saying about the energy that you felt in the King's Chamber. Well, here's a picture that we have. I took this. This is the energy from we took while we were in the Grand Gallery.
The Great Pyramid doing musical experiment. Suddenly, a standing column or wave of light energy moved up and down the Grand Gallery. When I was singing, I hit a certain frequency, and all of a sudden, like a light bulb was lit. And that was an indication that there was a musical acoustics methodology inside the pyramid, that the ancient masons or architects put this pyramid together for initiates who would be able to reach a certain state of consciousness and vibratory unity, we would call critical mass, and suddenly the light bulb would flash on. So we know that this also took place in other pyramids throughout the world, suggesting that the pyramids were based upon, yes, the mechanistic aspect of producing physical energy, but in a certain way, by opening up the attunement of the inner eye, the inner vision, allowed the initiate to see what I would call a spiritual cosmology of unity with the universe, that we were connected not only with the pyramid, but all pyramids throughout the world using the same type of energy frequency.
And like I said, I was sitting there and the walls dropped away and I was out in the stars. And this is not a unique experience. I know now 2 other people that had the exact same experience. There's something to do, we've done sound testing, both in the pyramids of Mexico, many of them, and as well as sound testing in the Great Pyramid, the King's Chamber and the Queen's Chamber and a few other places. And it seems that in addition to overtone resonances, there's undertone resonances. And those resonances actually prepare your mind to go into a type of alpha state. And I think that's really important because that's how these chambers work. And we noticed in Mexico, when they kind of restructured some of the inner chambers, they used kind of crappy stuff to fix it. You didn't get the resonant vibrations you did in the chambers that they haven't touched that were in good shape. So there's a whole vibratory frequency that we're ignoring, and the red granite being part of that.
So I want to introduce a new word for our vocabulary: acoustical physics. Acoustical physics is there with the pyramids of Egypt, Mexico, Peru, China, etc., etc. That has been overlooked by what I call reductionistic Egyptologists, who only look to the history of the dynastic period and don't look any further to the vibratory rotation of Mother Earth and how the ancients were able to tap into that concept. That vibratory construct for the ancients was F sharp. In our musical work inside the pyramid, we also used F sharp to A sharp and had similar results of paranormal phenomena, which we've documented extensively. Now, we work with Alan Howarth, who worked on some of the NASA musical experiments. We worked also with senior Egyptologists, geologists. So our team with the Schor Expedition was not of amateurs, but people had anywhere from 20 to 50 years of research. So what we're saying is we're able to see why these ancient monuments are historic landmarks, to point to the stars, to bring together the integration of knowledge, the psychology, the philosophy, the sociology, the architecture, the music, to basically say we are a cosmic creation. We are a human destined to the stars when we put the bits and pieces of the pyramid geometry together. Wherever we're born, the pyramid is there as a learning tool.
Let me jump in real quick. It's interesting that you mentioned F sharp and A sharp. F sharp is a very musical chord. It's used a lot. You're a musician, especially in the heavy metal game too as well. There's nothing like a good F sharp. But A sharp, that's a unique tonal choice. Why? I can feel F sharp. That makes sense. But A sharp, did that surprise you?
It did. In the triads that we were able to work with, both in Egypt, the triads of F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp. In Egypt, as well as in Yucatan, it was clear that there was a peak experience, a higher consciousness elevation that took place with A sharp. Again, to the musical ear, this is not, shall we say, proper.
Right.
But again, according to the whole purpose of why these inner chambers were shaped to produce through sacred geometry elevated states of consciousness, A sharp translates as the peak experience, breaking the eggshell, being able to see your mind outside the pyramid, being able to explore the greater circumference of Mother Earth. And by the way, the indigenous people of Mexico and Central America, using the circle patterns, would often indicate that peak experience in my vocabulary. The fact that the Earth was round or elliptic in its vibratory pattern, and by studying these vibrations, one would be able to accelerate a type of higher consciousness spirituality.
Check out this comment here, JJ. You ready? Yeah. JJ, look at the screen. This is the comment. Try F sharp at that rock door in Peru. I dare you. They're talking about a Muru. And yeah, hey, I've got a pretty smart audience for them to make that comment. Because we'll circle back to Muru in a second, but sound seems to come into play not only for a spiritual a ceremony or initiation, but also possibly a way to levitate and mold rocks around the world. It's not just Peru. These techniques seem to have been used everywhere. And I think that's very interesting, don't you?
Right. Well, Dr. Hurtak was in the documentary called The Mystery of the Sphinx that was narrated by Charlton Heston. And
John Anthony West.
And that's where that sound vibration showed that you can actually levitate, of course, small little pebbles. But if you have the right frequency, certainly you could levitate whole large blocks. So we do agree with that sound is key. In fact, we recently came out with a book called Sound, available on Amazon. You do Sound Hurtak, you'll get it. And we cover everything from plants singing to, the pyramids and the sound vibrations that we were able to experience. And of course, I think it's important to realize when you go around the world, Dr. Hurtak and the Keys of Enoch talk about that the Great Pyramid is only one of many, we'll say, vortex points around the planet. And of course, Mexico is another one of those. And they have, you stand in front of Chichen Itza and you clap your hands a certain way and the sound goes up the whole staircase and you get the Quetzal bird for Quetzalcoatl. So, they totally have coded sound into all the secret chambers.
We see that on a petroglyph in northern Mexico in our archaeological publication. Also, numerous pictures that we published over the years of the circular patterns. We will call them the vibration of the conic sections.
Now, how do you explain? Okay, all right. And now here's one of the $1 million questions, of which there are a lot of them. But how do you explain the lack of artistic value inside of the Great Pyramid and specifically the Grand Gallery? If it was supposed to be a tomb or a spiritual place, or if I'm Khufu, whatever, I'm going to adorn this palace so it's beautiful. And it's not. It's the opposite of beautiful, right? It's got it's engineered. I mean, it's perfect. I see all of that, but so was the sidewalk in front of my house.
Well, you said the right word, engineered. And we go along with Christopher Dunn. And from our research, again, the Giza's industrial complex, we show that the fact is, and also our friends did a video on this in Germany called Cheops Lüge, which means Cheops lie, that the water came much closer before the Aswan Dam to the pyramid. And what we noticed even from the Osiris tomb is that water tends to go up the plateau. I don't know how or why, but it does. It actually comes up. And so probably the subterranean chamber underneath the Great Pyramid had water. And if you look at it, it looks like a mess, like no one really specifically did anything to it. It's just been waterized, so to speak. And then if it climbed up the under subterranean passageways and then got to the Grand Gallery and you had these anodes and cathodes, you would be producing a special gas energy. And I believe that gas energy, hydrogen gas, could again be used for healing. We know today we use it for agriculture. We believe that it was one of the key ingredients for everything. Literally.
So if it was
electricity,
if it was a storage place for gas to cause a type of momentary sublimation, there would not be the need for inner embellishments in these rooms. For example, I've got a picture here from Myanmar where you have these beautiful exotic pyramidal temples. Beautiful on the inside, different designs, but the same alpha angle of the vortex. And unlike those of the Far East, the Egyptians, conquering basically the elements of nature, were able to sublimate and to produce a type of hydrogen power system, we believe.
So, but you can use that again for healing and health. So that's why it was both an initiation chamber because of the sound, the frequencies, and the dynamics of it, but also an energy generator. That's what we're proposing in our book. And it really relates everywhere because there was even places like down really up the Nile, but further down by Luxor, where you had these water areas, and we believe there was places where people would just go into the water and then come out and dream. We think that was electrified or energized water that was originally in those places like Luxor and Karnak, and that it was used for special initiations.
So
well, I did go. I was taken last year to well, this is what the priest called it. It was on my birthday, and it was a gift from the Department of Antiquities there for me. I went to an underground pharaonic lake in Dendera, and it was 100 feet under the sand in the desert. And so, and descending the stairs, no electricity, no technology. I had to go barefoot, no talking. And I went down there with this priest, and I get to the bottom. I can hear I can hear the lake. I can't see anything; it's black. Right, I'm 100 feet underground. But I went out into the lake about knee deep and baptized myself. Now, the priest had told me, I'm using the word baptized, that's my word, but the priest had told me, he said, this is where the pharaohs went to ask questions and get answers. What? Where are we going? And I'm looking around at the sand dunes, an underground pharaonic lake. All right, let's go. So anyway, so we go. And so I go down and I splash in this water and I'm in the dark and I'm blah, I drench myself. I got knocked in the head. The whole thing happened. Pineal gland. I have no idea. Nobody was with me. Desiree, if you would have been there, you could have gone, okay, Jimmy, breathe. But I didn't have anybody there with me.
You were initiated.
Yeah. Oh man. And so, but here's the thing with that whole ceremony. I fly back to the United States, and I start making phone calls. Right. I call William Henry. I call Schock. I call everybody. Dude, Jay Widener, right? Have you heard about this underground pharaonic? What are you talking about, Jimmy? It's in the back of Dendera, about a quarter mile out in the desert. What? Yeah, the stairway. I don't know what you're talking about. So nobody else that I've been able to reach out to, but that's not the point. I was looking for answers. So when I was telling everybody what I went through, they started, putting this together, and that's exactly what it was. It was a friggin' initiation. And the point about it, Desiree and JJ, it's not the sensational part, which was cool, and it lasted about 10 minutes. It's that they knew about this 5,000 years ago. That's the trippy part. We could talk about serotonin, melatonin, pineal gland, third eye, chakra, whatever you want. That's today's knowledge. They knew about that 5,000 years ago.
Well,
where did they get that from?
Well, I have to say, you've gone to the Osirion, connected with Seti's temple, and there
Yes.
you go down. There's also water underneath there, and unfortunately, they opened up a few of the, we'll say, chambers down there, which they had closed for a long time. And then we actually have a video that was shot connected with our associate Boris Said and John Anthony West, where actually Hawass is standing in front of the Sphinx temple and the Valley Temple out there. And he says water used to come here and they would rinse themselves and be initiated. So I believe water was almost everywhere. We've gone to
100%.
and water is there. In fact, that's the argument of our book, that actually almost all the pyramids are along the Nile lines. And you could say, well, that was just, a nice place. Then you go to Chichen Itza, right? We're talking about, we moved now to Mexico. What did they just find underneath the El Castillo at Chichen Itza? They found water. Why the hell would you ever put a big structure on top of water unless it was part of that initiation? Again, right. El Fayum pyramid, that's back to Egypt now, near the lakes, the Lake Moeris, and you go down and there's water stuck inside the pyramid. I mean, you can't even go half the way because of the water. And that's what we found also with the tomb of Osiris. And that's why people don't go there all the time, because it was a dry time that we were able to go and find the tomb. For the most part, water is present. So anyway, it is an initiation. And that's exactly what Hawass said. He said these were used for initiation.
It was even said by Lambert Dolphin, who was from Stanford Research Institute, who did the most exotic studies of the Great Sphinx back in the mid-70s, that there was a type of water capsule in front of the paws of the Sphinx, and somehow that water capsule was used for ritual baptism or washing or cleansing. So from all sides, there's a recognition now there's a lost, so we say, periodic chart that goes with the Great Pyramid, the Great Sphinx. And part of that is the experiential side. Without the experiential side of feeling the energy rush, as you and Desiree did, without feeling the flash in the eyes, as we saw in this picture when we use the sacred mantras, without the idea of recognizing that we are part of the greater structure by virtue of being the collective capstone on top of the pyramid as a beacon of light, the whole mystery is lost. We simply see something that's there for Japanese and American tourists with their fancy cameras. No, there's a whole methodology, there's a whole divine science connected with the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx. And in my book, The Keys of Enoch, I had a great Dutch artist who worked with some of the great musicians of Europe illustrate that inside the Great Sphinx of Egypt, there was a large passageway through which humans would be initiated. As you can see here, I'm holding this up to the screen. You look very carefully, you see inside the belly of the Sphinx of Egypt, humans passing through a ritual state of initiation. Underneath, you see a spiral with the human embryo, which is the substructure we believe that has other evidence of the earlier evolutionary story. And the Sphinx face represents the human ability to conquer the power of the lion or the sun or the solar spectrum. So this is something that's very important. Even the recent findings in Dendera have shown a human sphinx with the head of the Roman Emperor Claudius. The Roman Emperor's head is stuck on the body of the Sphinx. Why? Because the Romans conquered the Egyptians.
He paid for it. That's why.
But let's go to the next phase, because what you find in Dendera as well is ancient god figures, where the females in this one section were all reptilians. I don't know if you.
Yes. Oh yeah. You know, the thing is, I think this is just me, but that is such a powerfully spiritual sight.
It is.
And I stood out in front once and watched one person after another come out of there in tears. They were so affected by it. But it's such a beautiful sight. Wait. Before I forget. When you guys were there for the discovery of the Osiris shaft and tomb, what is the indication? What said Osiris to everyone?
That was actually given by Zahi Hawass after we found it, because he said, it's the god of the underworld. This should be named by that. So it really was him. But that's why, because it's so deep. It's probably maybe the deepest shaft or tomb in the entire Giza Plateau. So, of course, who would you give that to but Osiris?
So Osiris represents the portal of ascension in the Egyptian cosmology. In the Catholic Encyclopedia, he's the proto-Christ figure. We as a humanity are reaching the point of recognizing cosmic intelligence coming back from the stars, and they're encircling these very historic monuments of higher purpose, higher design, higher message information. So part of our story is to recognize there's a star map that we have to include in the picture. It's not just ground-based archaeology or geology. It's the astrophysical dimension that is opening up, the shafts pointing to the belt of Orion, just like we feel and find in Göbekli Tepe, the belt around these austere figures, or on Easter Island, the belt of Orion. The symbolism repeats itself in different cultural settings.
But according to Dr. Hurtak, it's not only the three pyramids that relate to Orion, but also that one particular star shaft. So if you look at the star shaft going the other direction, what do you find? Well, we believe it goes towards Alpha Draconis. So it really shows the duality of the reality that we're living in. You go further down to the Queen's Chamber, and if you go out the same direction as Orion, you will go to Sirius. So you have Sirius, Orion, and then if you draw a line from Sirius to Orion, you get the little Pleiades. Now you go over to Mexico, and Linda Shelley, who was an astroarchaeologist, said Orion was the father figure for the Mayans, and she showed that the lower part of the triangle connected with Safe and the belt was what they really recognized. But the idea is the same no matter if you go to Mexico or you go to Egypt, because we do believe that they had a higher cosmology. They understood the source of, we'll say, our civilization is what we really think this is all about.
Do you believe that we're going to be coming up against a break in about 5 minutes? Do you believe, I always hate saying this, it is my belief, I should say, that do you think that Egypt just inherited the pyramids and the Giza Plateau?
Certainly, the recent geological expeditions point to a much earlier period of time. Not talking 5,000 before present, but looking at something on the order of 20 to 30,000 before present, which would indicate what the great Greek philosophers would call the golden age of the gods. We would call them space engineers or space architects, those who were there in the previous cycle of time.
And as I mentioned, we just went to Teotihuacan, which is the pyramid of the sun, the pyramid of the moon in Mexico. Well, most people ignore the fact that there's actually a third structure there that's also large, and that's called the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. So technically there's 3 pyramids there as well. And if you go back, and I did some research on this, they actually don't know who built them. And, it's probably not even as old as the Great Pyramid is. But they were saying it was the Toltec culture. But then now they're finding out it's goes back 500, 600 BC. And the Toltec culture wasn't supposed to exist at that time. And that's now how they're pushing it back. Could even go further back. But at least no one knows even who built Teotihuacan. A lot of this is really missing, and we do believe it's connected with the ancient Atlantis area and possibly Mu as well.
Now, it's the same thing. Like I said, we're up against a break. We'll take that when we're done. It's not a hard break. It's the same thing in Peru too, as well, and in Central and North America. We can't leave those areas out either. But when you go to these megalithic sites, where the sites themselves were inherited, and nobody knows who built the original stuff. And the original stuff, and it's the same around the world, it's not just in one location. The oldest stuff, the unknown stuff, is the most kick-ass stuff. It's the stuff that's built the best. It's built to another standard. It's also the biggest stuff too as well. And if you push it back that far, then there wasn't supposed to be anything back then, right? There wasn't a wheel. There wasn't metal. There wasn't anything. Or something else was going on, right? And that's where we are today.
I call it future artifacts. We're going back, but we're finding very interesting pieces of synthesized glass that has radiation levels that are far beyond the background radiation level. So we're finding things of the future in the archives of the past. We're finding the time capsules. We're opening the time capsules. We're preparing humanity to see the big roadmap for the return of cosmic intelligence. We will call the cosmic inventors, or the initiators, are coming back because we have failed the experiment of humanity. We are destroying the environment. We're destroying ourselves. We're being hung up on dualistic plus or minus realities. We have overlooked the capstone, the genius of the higher mind within the human mind. And this is why we need people like you to sound the alarm and sound the message. You are the Paul Revere sounding the message that the cosmic forces are returning to the scene of the experiment.
Well, I just stole it. I stole it. I wrote it down. Future artifacts. That's now mine. I own that, JJ. but you know what? At least I'm coming clean on the air. But that is such a great point. And when you, it's one thing to talk about the Incas, or even when Greek or Persia, the Hittites, when they invaded Egypt, everything was just screwed up. They tried to imitate what they were looking at, right? But they just couldn't do it. Nobody could, and it doesn't matter where you go in the world. They would be impressed by it. They wanted to build it, but nobody could. And whoever did, we know nothing about. What were the Spanish told when they went to Bolivia, when they came into Tiwanaku, when they asked the locals, right? The Amare?
Yes.
Who built these?
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, who built these?
And
Yeah.
Arthur Poznański,
Oh,
Arthur Poznański, who was the great European anthropologist, detailed that this was zone number 1 for cosmic intelligence. And while we're at it,
No, I just want to say one thing. So if you go back to the Sphinx and Valley Temple at the Great Pyramid in front of the Sphinx, and you look at the stones, the way they're placed, it equals and is almost identical to what you find in Pumapunka and Tiwanaku. So it's identical. I mean, the way that they position those block upon block with, you couldn't even get your fingernail through them.
Right. You know what I did. I wanted to go back to the Osirion too as well.
I love that.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. Now I took, and I'm not in any way exaggerating, I took 2,000 pictures of cracks and corners in Peru. I was fascinated with it. I mean, everybody else is like taking pictures of the mountains and these big sites. I go right up to these walls, and taking pictures. It's the most impressive thing to see. And then when you back up and you're looking at, tens of thousands of stones that are all the same. I couldn't take enough pictures. I was, I
should have had you with us.
Yeah, I was taking pictures of cracks. And so anyway, it's the most impressive part, but it's not just Peru. Right? You see it all over the world. And I just don't, somebody was teaching somebody something. This knowledge just doesn't, isn't born one day and a light bulb goes off. No, you are taught that engineering. The question is, who did the teaching?
Well, Japan has those temples too. That's our video that's on YouTube, Temple of Mu. So I highly recommend, because we compare at least Peru to Japan and exactly what you're talking about.
Now, a few minutes ago, I mentioned future artifacts. I want to show the audience, if we have time, from my book, Giza's Industrial Complex. You'll see these small amulets there on the page above my fingers. And then the devices we use to look at the background radiation levels. Normally, it's in the region of 20 cycles per minute, and one on the other side shows 80 plus cycles per minute. So how is it
the stone?
How is it that inside the underground passageways that we would found glass chips, just like modern computer chips, that were analyzed at Jet Propulsion Lab by my colleagues years ago, that showed elevated areas of radioactivity? I mean, how does that polished technology. And by the way, when we analyzed it, it had a blue-green radiation right from the artifact itself. How does this chemistry react under such unusual conditions 5,000 years later? Except it is what I would call a future artifact.
Would you think? And then I'll take a break. Would that suggest not only nuclear technology, but maybe somebody dropped a bomb somewhere 10,000 years ago?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, what happened there.
Right.
But in actuality, I'd rather get away from that idea because, as we know, even the extraterrestrials can't stand that technology. But at least the technology that does generate certain types of energy. And,
Right.
hydrogen can save our planet. We've been connected with the Hydrogen Energy Society for years. I mean, it is our solution to a lot of what's going on with COP28 and everything like that. So people really should realize, I think the Egyptians had it right, and we've got to get there.
So to answer your fuller question, the French and the Japanese have found evidence of radiation in certain parts of the Giza Plateau. And I would argue that the Great Pyramid and its environment was a great archive from artifacts brought in from different parts of the Middle East and North Africa. So to follow up with the tritium findings in the country of Jordan a few years ago, from that biblical scenario called Sodom and Gomorrah, the fact that these artifacts could be brought in to the Egyptian empire and sequestered beneath these huge pyramids in a library of knowledge, of course, is a great possibility. But we're pushing the envelope. We are convinced that cosmic intelligence is on our doorstep, and it will find that its point of interest, like our point of interest, is the colossal monoliths throughout the world, from east to west, from north to south. Egypt is the kingpin, bringing together all of the varieties of different cultures, languages, and astrophysical details into a sensible tablet of knowledge.
Yeah, and the evidence of vitrification, which is not in any singular spot around the world, which would be something maybe cosmic, and could be cosmic for sure. But vitrification is found everywhere, and what would cause that? And in some cases, depending on what has been damaged by heat, whether it's red granite or sand being turned to glass, we're talking about very, very high concentrations of heat, and heat also creates radiation. And what would do this? There's only so much can be explained with lightning strikes and comets. There's something else. There was some high technology that was going on probably maybe even hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Very interesting. Yeah. In our book, Giza's Industrial Complex, we have this pyramid it's an ancient drawing based on some of the legends that in Lake Morris, there were two pyramids, and the top of the pyramid, which was quite high, was equal to what was going inside the water. So they had a technology of using that energy and being able to make certain types of electrical manifestations. There was supposedly like a kind of lighthouse at the very top. We believe that they used this energy, they knew how to do it, and they hopefully used it for positive circumstances.
Let's take our break right here. Our guest night doctors, JJ and Desiree Hurtak. We'll be back right after this short break. I'm Jimmy Church.
My job is not to preach. My job is to take you on this journey.
In a state of passion, nothing negative can happen.
That it's the moons of those planets that would have life.
Sometimes I see, these energies also in your field.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black t-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black t-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black t-shirt one of 2 ways. First, go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free t-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Go Beckley Tepe. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, JJ and Desiree Hurtak are with us. And we were, right before the break, we were talking about water. I want to get back to water for a quick second before we move on. And that is the Osirion. You guys just got back from Egypt. And what is very cool about the Osirion right now is that it's opened again. They've been doing a lot of restoration there. There's also some archaeological work that's going on top of the ridge, and also I don't know if you guys heard this, but it appears they have found a second Osirion. It's about a mile away. I was taken by the director there up to the top of the ridge, and he pointed to where it is, where the dig is going on. I didn't have access to that, but apparently there's a second Osirion, and that is very interesting, and especially because of the area. But here's my question to you two. There isn't an Egyptologist, nobody knows, right? And the Osirion being associated to Seti the First is a load of BS, as we all know. It just happens to be there, but it's probably 50, 100 feet lower than the temple itself. That's Seti the First, so this has got to be Seti too. No. But anyway, you have access now, and you are able to go down inside of it. For years, all of the research was done at the top of the, looking down over the railing. But now you can go down, and they've opened up the rooms down there. It's pretty incredible. But you look around at the tonnage and the size and the enormous structure that it is, and you can see the water. It feels like the Hoover Dam. You know what I mean? It's something like that. What's your theory behind the Osirion? What was its purpose? And the second half of the question is, what about the age?
Well, first of all, I just want to give everyone the perspective. Actually, that Seti temple on the top is the one that has on that upper lintel the thing that looks like a helicopter. Everyone looks at that, and perhaps even a submarine type of pictograph. And I do believe that is because people had seen things and knew about it. And then you go down to the Osirion, which is what you're talking about, and there's the flower of life there, which is a sacred geometry. And in fact, if you take certain of the fullness of the geometry away, you get into like the whole development of the human body and the geometries that are connected with the unfoldment of life. So these are very interesting places. We're just not talking about, some walls or something. They're very unique. And the fact that, as you said, there's water. And we do believe the water was used, again, for both energy, technology, as well as initiation. And yes, we went in, we did a meditation in one of the side rooms, very, very smooth walls. Perfectly smooth walls, great acoustics. And even there's two side walls on both sides. We went down, and the art on the other one, which is very primitive in a certain sense, had figures that were upside down. It was very, very interesting. So definitely old, and very sacred.
I was there in the mid-70s as a young scholar. I have yet to release pictures which would indicate that the tombs were untouched and would indicate that there was another extension about 1,000 feet into the labyrinthian structure of the Osirion. But more to the point, in my contact experience, I was given various scenarios that Egypt was once a schoolhouse of what we would call the cosmic architects. In fact, in the Coptic document called Asclepius relates the story of a spiritual entity who says Egypt was once the schoolhouse of the gods, but now Egypt has become really the place of corpses and tombs because the spirituality of Egypt has been lost. And that is in the Nag Hammadi text found in the Valley of the Kings. I was told in my telepathic experience that Egypt was, in that particular area of the Osirion, a place for 24 tombs which were connected with 24 cosmic civilizations that were once in the cosmology of the ancients, and that we would find these 24 tombs, some of which were known until quite recently with the underground extension that you talk about. So this is very important because it opens up a whole new area where massive knowledge, I believe artifacts will be found suggesting the golden age of the gods. Another interesting reflection goes back to the work of Dr. Kenneth Weeks, who was America's greatest Egyptologist in the mid-90s. He was connected with events pictured on Time and Newsweek magazine in 1995, finding this two-stage mausoleum in the Valley of the Kings. And in the Keys of Enoch, key 314, is a mention of an unknown prince of Egypt called phonetically Aben-Herkenephish, the son of Ramses II. This was an obscure king. And when Kenneth Weeks went down in the Valley of the Kings, guess what? He came across the name that I just pronounced and found this was the largest up to that date of the underground Egypt.
Well, what was interesting, he was actually also connected with someone who even had been there earlier. And this man, who was actually John Whitmore's father, I believe, actually had seen that name and pronounced it. And when he did energy of light manifest, this is like
underground.
Yeah, this is like over 75 years ago. And it was a time when everything was very pristine there. And this really just, showed that the technology was there also for sound frequencies to activate some of these tombs. And I believe that that's key, which is why in some places there is a lot of sacred energies and names to be read, because when you read those sacred names, you actually get the energies.
So when I was pronouncing different names of the divinities in Mexico at Tulum back in the year 2000, thereabouts, light manifested on my body like it did to Sir Francis Whitmore a century before, which is to say that sacred areas are sacred because there humans meet the divine and the divine meets or connects with the human. There is a bio-coupling that takes place between the paraphysical nature of the human and the astrophysical or the cosmophysical nature of the divine teacher or master. And there is that coupling that allows the eyes to be open, a morphogenic field of energy to be changed, and consciousness momentarily lifted to realize, no, these are not playthings for American or Japanese tourists. These are actual places of contact, which will allow, under certain conditions, people to sublimate and actually see the supreme architects behind the scene.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there is, when you go to, speaking of the Valley of the Kings, and I think you're referring to KV-14, and KV-14, first off, friggin' huge. That's a pretty big. It takes 20 minutes to walk down to get to the bottom of that thing. But anyway, when you enter that there were 2 sarcophagus in there. They're still there, but they've been blasted and blown apart. And the size of these things, again, very similar to the Serapeum, where you're looking at, 15, 20 foot long, 10 foot wide, granite black, sarcophagus that have been obliterated. And how because they're this thick, right? The lid is, 2.5 feet thick. And to have them busted apart like that, and you look at this pile of rubble, the room itself is undamaged, right? The painting, the art is all still there, but the sarcophagus themselves are that are broken apart. I don't know what kind of energy went down to cause this kind of destruction, but it wasn't done with sledgehammers, right? I don't think it was done by humans. It just doesn't explain anything when you see this, and there isn't an explanation from the Egyptologist as well. What do you think could cause that kind of destruction when the tomb itself is still intact, right? Well, if it was an explosion, the whole thing would have imploded and collapsed on itself.
In terms of unified magnetic field, it would be a type of implosion event, right, in rather than from without.
Right.
Well, whoever was there was obviously smart in terms of the higher physical sciences. Again, one is baffled by the gargantuan nature of these huge structures and the preciseness, for example, from the Great Pyramid go star shafts pointing to the belt of Orion.
And
we're looking at
also-
1,400 light years thereabouts. So we're talking about cosmic distances that are precisely measurable and aligned with imperfection that really defies what we have even under present day calculations.
So we talked about the fact that some of this, or at least the cosmology behind that of, the Valley of the Kings, for example, is probably connected with an understanding of Atlantis and Mu or Lemuria. But in actuality, what I think is important is they had a cosmology that was cosmic, that they understood the importance of these star systems. And when you look in the ceiling of some of the Valley of the Kings locations, you find the boat of Nut. And in the boat of Nut, not only are there smaller little vehicles, which I call scout ships, but you also have all these different beings. And we've been talking about this quite a bit because, you do have the reptilian forms, you have the bird forms, you have all these things that people are encountering now when they start looking at certain types of extraterrestrial forms of intelligence. And we believe that the ancients understood that. That was their cosmology. They knew that that's what the heavens were. And when you look up, the boat of Nut is literally what's in the heavens. And that's exactly what they're explaining to us today.
So the Great Pyramid is a type of ethnographic museum showing
the Valley of the Kings would be better.
Different levels of intelligence. Yeah. And that's all through the river system of the Nile. You have the 7 chakras along the Nile, corresponding to different energy modalities that are necessary in the evolution of the human psyche.
That not only does that make a lot of sense, but I think that the world, anybody that shows an interest in Egypt today and lost history, is starting to figure out. We're getting smarter. And the dogma that we have been taught since, it's kind of like Napoleon, right? Napoleon, the start of Egyptology when he showed up there. So with the French and with the British, that's only 200 years of knowledge there. But it's the same things that they were saying 200 years ago have been repeated and repeated and repeated. And now we accept that as truth. Well, we can look around today and understand that no, there's something else going on here. And we are yelling for answers, aren't we?
Absolutely. And those interested in our book, they can go to Amazon or the keysofenoch.org and order Giza's Industrial Complex, because it has been recommended by the late Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, who worked at Lawrence Livermore.
And by Pat Flanagan, who was a very good friend of ours, and he understood the power of the pyramid. That was great. So that's one aspect. But if we can go back, I gave you a couple of pictures. Maybe you can pull up one of the grids, especially the one that looks like it has two globes on it.
I have it right here.
All right, because I think what's important to say is that although we do feel Egypt is the center for this last 6,000 years of history, more or less, that the planet really is this greater grid structure. So what Dr. Hurtak wrote about here from the Keys of Enoch, the lower part is, we'll say, the natural structures that exist just because our planet is this natural vortex point. But then there's also augmented additional areas that can be created and maintained by pyramidal energy when you place it there. So basically, I think it's important to realize that even though the Great Pyramid is part of that, Mexico and places all around the world are also key areas. In fact, whether they're key areas, like you're showing here, you go to South America, that area in the very bottom is Bahia Blanca. And there's a lot of UFO sightings that are there. You go north, you find the Bermuda Triangle. There's also obviously many UFO sightings. In fact, there's a whole study that says California and Florida, the two most frequented places by UFOs based on sightings that people have reported. Obviously, Southern Africa is a place that many people have seen UFOs. And Elizabeth Clark, who was a very good friend of ours, had contact with someone who said that their civilization lived on Mars, Earth, and Venus. And because of the solar changes, they had to leave Venus, and they left civilizations on Mars and our world, Earth, but in actuality, Mars didn't make it. So, these are all different places. And the top is these artificial, because in addition to that, areas that you've frequented in Peru is noted here. And
so what is also important in the bottom of the two is the water or ocean areas, which tie into what we call USOs, underwater subcraft. And more information will be coming out about this next year and the year after, that most of these higher civilizations are marine-based. They're based in the ocean.
Like Hawaii is often frequented as well.
Off of Puerto Rico, off of Japan. All of these other areas are going to come into play as we go into the deeper aspects of disclosure, that we've been watched as a human civilization on the surface by those who were able to operate out of the ocean frontier as well as the land bases of antiquity. All of this is now coming closer to our human logic because we've stretched the metaphor and we suddenly realize, hey, we're here for more purposes than simply looking at the big corporations run our future.
And then if we could go to the other map of the world, because this is also in Dr. Hurtak's book, Keys of Enoch. And that is the fact, I think came in you'll find it. Based on the 12 tribes of Israel and the book listed in Book of Numbers, it actually shows, if you take the Great Pyramid as the center area and you go around, you'll find all these very, very interesting places that going straight down, you find the giant footprint, which we'll show you also later when we get into a larger, there you go. Yeah. So that's actually on that line. There's also what, the area connected with
Mauritius.
Well, Mauritius also has pyramids. It's another area. Then you go all the way over to Japan, and that area, Isle of Flores, goes right there with those small hobbit peoples, all the way over to Japan.
Move to the Far East.
Can you go the other way?
Move toward Japan on the map. There you go.
Yeah. Actually, there you go.
And there in Indonesia, in that same area, they found the oldest writing, and possibly the oldest pyramid going back 27,000 years.
So
that's pretty. That was some pretty amazing news last month to finally have academia take a look at something as fantastical as a statement. That Gadang Badang is 25,000 years old and artificial.
That's right.
That obviously, to the uninitiated, we're talking about initiation tonight, right? To the uninitiated, that's crazy talk, right? That 25,000, but that is that got published. That's peer reviewed
in Nature magazine. Actually, 27,000 years ago. We're on the small.
The update that has pushed the time back another 2,000 years.
27,000, and makes Göbekli Tepe. They're only claiming 11,000, even though we'll push it to 20,000 as well.
Sure.
No.
Well, but that goes back to Muhammad Ibrahim, you and others that have suggested. These, pushing back these dates, 20,000 years, 25,000 years, 30,000 years. Pumapunku, Tiwanaku, the Sun Gate there, as you know, that research goes back now almost 70 years. Absolutely. Today, with modern, suggesting that it was 15,000 BC. That's 5,000 years before the end of the last ice age, where academia is going to pump the brakes and go, no, sorry, that's not the case. But with computers today and software, we know the exact alignment of Pumapunku and Tiwanaku and the significance of that. And that's it. It is what it is. And I think that pushing back these dates further and further are not only going to become the norm, but I think that'll freak out people more than ET is visiting us. You know what I mean?
Keep in mind that this map I showed you is 50 years old. I made this 50 years ago. And no other map has a footprint of the giants and has a place in Indonesia
Yeah, the Isle of Flores.
that shows the hobbits, the midgets. So no other book in the world has the extremes of the small people and the giants on the same page.
But what we're really saying is all this is part of a mathematical unfoldment, that everything is mathematically based. It's consciously based, but also mathematically based. And so even timings and cycles connected with our planetary system is all part of that. And things happen for a reason in particular locations.
So within our Bible, there was a mathematical Bible. There's a musical Bible. If you put that together, shows a prehistory of how the story is repeated again and again, from the parochial seat to the ecumenical diaspora. What we're seeing right now is the conclusion of a 6,000-year-old cycle that is based upon a much earlier seed experimentation called in the Keys of Enoch, the Adamic humanity, although it's humanity that could speak and work with the divine mind of the universe, the image of the divine. And the Adamic seed was the ability to think outside the body, outside the box, and be able to extrapolate the wonderful aspect of the house of many mansions.
Right. And going back to South America, which is the key place, even Wikipedia is starting to say, well, the people in Colombia, South America, actually existed 15 to 20,000 years ago. And there's a place in Brazil called Pedra Ferrada, where they did ABOX, which is an analysis like carbon dating, and they are also going back 15 to 20,000 years ago. So, I mean, they can't deny that people had existed in those areas back then. They just, of course, always consider them very primitive and not advanced. But then when you see things like Tiwanaku, you realize that they were advanced. In fact, actually, a friend of ours was an archaeologist there, and there's, we'll say there's places to do water agriculture up. It was hard to imagine you could feed that many people in the mountains. And they found that there was places that the water ran and kept it hot in the daytime, so it survived at night to be able to water the plants. I mean, they had a sophisticated structure there.
Ecological.
It's incredible to see. Yeah. I one of my comments, I'm so fortunate to be able to explore the world like you two have done for so long, because now I can make those comments and those observations. And let me tell you something. One of the things that blew my mind, and I want to talk about a Muru in just a second, since we're on South America now. But when you stand at 13,000 feet, right? You're struggling to breathe. You're at 13,000 feet, and you look around at the thousands of years old irrigation systems that are engineering marvels, and they're still running today. The water's flowing down, and this and then it's coming down and feeding the and the terracing. You're driving around. People don't understand what I'm saying. Listen to my words. We're driving at 13,000 feet, 14,000 feet. And you look at the mountains, and they're all terraced up a couple more thousand feet, where people have been farming for thousands of years. It's like crazy. It's just like, but there it is. You don't have to imagine it. You just look and see, and there's irrigation systems to get all of this stuff done. You look at the storage facilities for the grain, right? For the corn and the potatoes that are thousands. You look and you're like, how old is that? Did Jesus hang out there? How old is that? And that's where we keep our potatoes. Yeah. Potatoes. Wow. It's just, it's incredible to see. Like sites like Muru. You guys have written about it. I've got some pictures.
Yeah, please.
When you see a site like that, where we're talking about spirituality, I'll tell you about my experience in a second. But this is one of the craziest, most unbelievable, and beautiful sites on the planet, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. And the question is, where is all this going? It's going to a new roadmap of recognizing what we will call cosmic citizenship, how we connect the pieces of our ancestors, how we recognize they were smarter than we are in some respects, realizing a multidimensional universe. At the same time, it gives us incentives and inspiration to reach for the future, where we will become really the byproduct of the leap from humankind to spacekind, building our cities in space.
And of course, this place that we're going to be showing you is an ancient, what one would call portal of ascension. And even it's supposed to be a sacred area that people would be able to tap into other realities, higher realities, and experience those realities. And you were tapping into it, right, Jimmy, when you were there just recently?
I was just there recently. Now, I'm going to pop this up. I want. This is. Oh, did I? I pulled it up and put it. I'm too quick on the mouse, folks. I'm just too quick on the mouse. So, when tell us about Muru.
Well, that's what we know about it, that it's literally a hidden portal. And basically it's a keyhole.
It's the doorway to ascension in stone relief, but also there's a paraphysical door that you go through if you have a high mental vibration. And there's a key point, it's illustrated in our book, Over Self-Awakening, that takes you to all the sacred places around the world. But this is unique in South America because it represents really the underground labyrinthian system that you find not only in the mountains of the Andes, but also connected with underground structures in cities, connected with other portal areas. For example, in Ecuador, where I was taken below the mountains many years ago by a Catholic archaeologist, priest, and I saw an altar there under the should we say, the 200-foot drop, bedrock, and the top of a pyramid inside the mountain itself. The natives said that the star people were there and they left behind structures that we would find. So again, if you go to our website and look at our book,
Over Self-Awakening,
we will take you in terms of artistic excellence to the various energy points of the world where you will actually be able to simulate the mental experience that has to go with the picture.
And this is definitely one of them, the keyhole to the stars, one could say. What do you feel about it?
Well, okay, there's my personal experience and the stories that we have heard over the years. One of, like the original story told by the villagers. Now, there's a small village, when I say it's small, that sits in front down the hill from Muru. It's the village of Muru, right down the hill. And so the story goes that it's been handed down for hundreds of years that a shaman, a priest, went up to this about 400 years ago when it spoke. He kneeled, right? And then spoke a phrase and disappeared, never came back. What he spoke has been lost to antiquity. People have been going up and chanting "Open Sesame" or whatever to try and repeat this. There's a couple of stories over the years. But that's not what is most fascinating to me. Now, I did the whole thing. I did the ceremony. I was with the shaman. I went up. I did it. I knelt. I put my forehead. That's what you do. You put your hands on the wall. You put your forehead in the notch, which is what I'm doing here. Right? There's a notch in the wall, and so I did the whole thing. And this took me about 5 minutes. Then I turn around. What is funny, you guys, is look at my face. I'm just like I went somewhere else. Check this out.
It looks like it fits you perfectly.
There's the notch right there. That's where you put your forehead. So anyway, that isn't what was crazy. Behind the wall, behind the key. Let me back up one more shot here. Right here. Okay. So behind this behind the mountain, there's a tunnel. And it goes from the back of the rock. The whole hill is just one giant rock. Okay. And there's a tunnel. And you can go in. You can go in about 20 feet. It used to go through the entire rock to the back of this key that you see. I call it a key. It looks like a keyhole. To this. The villagers of Muru, the Mare Indians, filled it in a couple of 100 years ago. It's bricked off. You cannot access it. And then they told me why, because that was my question. Why? I want to go. Can I go see it? No, you can't. Why? Because people were disappearing.
Yeah.
Not dying.
No, disappearing. Like in Germany and Austria, there's Berchtesgaden. Actually, the mountain there actually has the same thing, that people disappear. They go in, they disappear. That's not unusual. Also, the area, that ancient church in Cusco, also has tunnels underneath it.
Yes, it does.
People are also disappearing. There are all these vortex points that I believe don't just take you into the center of the tunnel, so to speak, but actually take you into other dimensions. They are vortexes that sometimes people go into, like the Bermuda Triangle. Like exactly that.
Right. There are some stories in Cusco. If I had unlimited resources, I would do an archaeological dig. I would do it at Sacsayhuaman, and I would do it in downtown Cusco. I would dig straight down, because the stories go from the locals that live there that there are two cities underneath Cusco. Cusco's the third. There's a second, and then there's a first city. And that tunnel that you're talking about at the church, the Vatican is the one that stopped that. The Vatican.
We knew the archaeologists who were part of that about 25 years ago under the altar of the church in Cusco.
That's right.
They were finding bodies. That was one of the problems.
It's great. It's great. It's what you and I, the three of us, are talking about right now. I want the audience to understand that this talked about in Cusco. And it's really weird how the government there, and the Vatican, and they stepped in. The priest, right? I think it was a cardinal priest that allowed that door to be opened, right? And for people, got fired that day, right? Excommunicated. And those tunnels have never been opened again. And
let me just say this: in our work with the light phenomena, there was a linguistic music practice, which very few people understand. But when you understand this with the sacred pictures, one of which I have here in another book I wrote on the sacred names of the Divine Mother, opens the mind to the many dimensions. This is the name of Itzapolnuk, which is the Mayan word for the lady cloth weaver, of how sacred areas of the world are brought together through sacred geometry, like weaving cloth.
Yeah, the Mayans believe that every single star in the sky was positioned like a grid structure, or like the Spider Woman they talk about in the North American indigenous tradition. But the fact is also the pyramids, and we believe that all this is grid aligned to the star systems. And so when you get into, which in closing I love to say, Sirius is connected with the feminine aspect of, we'll say, the mothering nature of creation. The Pleiades, even according to Dr. Hurtak, was part of the cradle and throne for our own civilization. And Orion actually takes you out of our local universe into other cosmic dimensions beyond this physical as well as multidimensional reality.
So besides the geology, the architecture, the culture, history, et cetera, you need musical acoustics to have the experience of the higher dimension. If you don't have that, it's all history. It's all the left hand or the right hand.
JJ, I've never asked you this over the years. I've been wanting to. I'm going to do it now. What instrument do you play?
I was playing the piano as a young composer.
Pretty much the piano.
My music is played by the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra. It's illustrated in my new book with Desiree called Sound, which is on acoustical engineering. I had the opportunity to work with Morton Sabatnik, the father of electronic music, Ravi Shankar, the great maestro with the sitar, who could leave his body with certain vibratory levels.
Sure.
I can go on, but that's not the focus of what we want to talk about now. Is the focus of opening our heart to the temple of spirit, which we are, realizing that the ancient Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, Coptic mantrams do
and
work,
Egyptian,
like the Sanskrit and the Tibetan and the other part of the planet, to raise a consciousness to experience what we will call the multidimensional self, the non-local self. And when we understand that, we are prepared to work with cosmic intelligence. If not, it's all a game of mathematics. It's all a mystery covered up by government authority. So we are at a breaking point now where you and I and others like ourselves who've gone to these sacred areas must provide the bigger picture and the tuning fork, that this is something that we can experience on very high levels. And by that, weave the culture pattern of human unity together. In the use of metaphor, it's a basic gathering of the tribes of humanity into a higher nexus point.
And of course, sadly, it's hard to use ceremony, one could say, in these ancient places because, with the tourist industry and whatever else, these energies have been shut down. But when you do use them, actually gateways, portals literally are able to open. And so that's what's exciting. We believe that many of these structures were designed for frequency activation for ourselves and for the planet. And I know there's people going around right now, we'll say planting crystals, and doing certain things to be able to energize these places so that we're calling in and bringing forth the connection with the original cosmology, which is also, we believe, connected with the builders in some way.
Yeah, for sure. There isn't any question at all to how vibration and tones and music, certainly, pleasing music too as well. It depends on what pleases you. But that our body is 95% water. And vibration, music affects that in a good way and a bad way, right? It can go both directions. But everything else vibrates. Watch a child react to music. Watch an animal react to music. Watch a rock get affected by that. And then all of that reaches out into consciousness. And E.T. fully understands this. And I believe, this is my take, but I believe the ancients had it all figured out. They did. They had it all figured out. We've got amnesia, and we have forgotten what got us here. But I think we're going to swing it back around. I wanted to show you this. JJ, you're absolutely right. I'm going to ask you this question. Do you still play? When was the last time you tinkled the ivories? Tickled.
Well, this afternoon.
Okay, that's it.
Well, we recently did a CD with Steve Halpern that's out, and we have lots
Steve's
of
cool. Steve's the man. Steve's the man.
Sexy woman, I love it.
Yeah. Now, so going back to sound and vibration, right? That's why I pulled this picture up. When most people they see a photograph of a sexy woman, right? And they see something like this, and that's all they see. They don't understand that it's like this for 1,900 acres.
But it's like that also in the valley, in the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple. I wish you had some pictures of that. I don't have.
I do have those, and also in the Osirion down at the entryway where the water comes through. Look at that construction. The corners are all overlapping stones, and those stones are 50 tons each. And they're all stacked up and carved like they are here, like this, where the stones are taking overlapping corners. But yeah, I think sound and vibration is used here, and people just don't get it. This is a 30-foot tall, 650-ton stone. Okay, that's impressive. But they're all that big. And it's just
And I have to say, I said I grew up in Miami. Well, there's also Coral Castle. You've ever heard of that? The guy, they used to bring him limestone blocks, and within 24 hours, he had it upstanding in perfect shape. Yeah, at least Scallon. And he actually also used magnetic fields on some of it, according to research that we've done. But sound was key. And he also had this whole repertoire about sound and vibration as well.
Now, there's a couple other important pictures we sent to you for our audience. So if you could shift a little bit to those pictures.
But this is fabulous.
Are they better than this picture of me?
No. I don't think they're any better, but
we'll just leave it with Jimmy. This is fabulous. So that's all the cracks you were shooting, right?
We have found this underground. Now you see this above ground, but we have found these structures.
He wants the one of us in the cave. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Let me pull it up. I got it right here.
So there's so much more to see, because we're going to jump now to Mexico as a kind of probably closing here.
Because one of the maps that was shown mentally in 1973, that was an ancient civilization in central Mexico, Guatemala.
And actually they
built underground cities. And here we are walking, Desiree. It can't be seen, but she's in the back with the lights.
No, actually, I'm taking
the picture. Where we were in one of the underground walkways that went under approximately 3 pyramids. I can imagine.
And in that whole area, there's 25 pyramids. Most people don't know about it. It's not far from Uxmal. And in fact, the Mexican government doesn't want to find another pyramid anywhere because they have to take care of it.
More responsibility for the bureaucrats.
But there's 25 pyramids there. And it actually shows the previous cycles of time. They believe up to 1 million people lived in the whole Yucatan, Petan area at the time of Christ.
Or even increased that more recently, according to National Geographic.
Maybe even to 2 million or more. But they had water canals, as you were saying about how
hydraulic lift systems.
Incredible stuff.
Perfect or near perfect networks of tunnels that would go for literally tens of kilometers in various directions underground. And they were buttressed by these huge rock-like protuberances.
But what it
structures.
It actually was the collapse of the Mayan, which happened because there was drought, like maybe even 20 to 30% of the normal rainfall for a period of time. And then there was flooding. And this is showing up in these underground structures, these caves. And they were used caves. They weren't just natural. I mean, they were natural formations in this case.
But there's much more that's going to be seen, I believe, the next few years coming out of central Mexico and Guatemala. And what we've explored is the musical attunement of the Great Pyramids of Yucatan Peninsula, which matches those that we measured with musicologists in Egypt. Now, these are not just amateur musicologists, they're the high-end musicologists who have doctorates or have at least master's degree of musical preparation. So what we're seeing is a musical labyrinthian system that opens up the channels of passage. So this is not something that normally you find unless you have a sensitivity or psychic attunement to know where to go underground and not be afraid of walking these great underground passages that go literally for tens of kilometers.
But we think, as you said, with the area of the keyhole, that, these caves and tunnels are everywhere. In Ecuador and that area, you have the Tayos caves, which are really places that are sacred areas. And people understood both, again, what's above the ground is significant, but also what's under the ground is also significant. The chambers of initiation.
So when I was in Mexico in 1970 with Dr. Diane Hanik and Pedro Faris, who was the Walter Cronkite of Mexico, they were doing a newscast, and all of a sudden spaceships came out of one of these areas. So there's a high probability that there are underground archives still being used by inter or extrasolar visitors or interplanetary visitors.
So Jimmy, let's go back to one of your pictures of your recent trip. Any of the places. That was great. I love Sexy Walmart. I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's I actually had another question for you guys, but the the mind-blowing stuff for me from Peru, everybody wants to, hear about, Machu Picchu, or these sites. And I get that. Sacsayhuaman is a mind-blowing thing. But for me, it's Morai. And I still, I can't. I'll pull up a quick image of this.
Also, Lake Titicaca, people are still seeing UFOs coming in and out.
Yeah, well, okay. So, which is a good reason why to bring up Morai, because Morai is built in what the locals say describe as wait a minute. You guys want to see another portal?
Yeah.
You guys want to see a portal? Check this out. All right. This is a cave. It's called Napo on the top of this mountain. Now, this is at 13,000 feet. All right. And so this is looking out, but checked it. So I was told that this is like the most spiritual place in all of Peru, and right. So I'm like, okay, how special can it be, right? All right. So this is inside of the cave, looking out, talking about acoustics. JJ, you see this area right here?
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's where you ohm. And so everybody would line up and sing into these areas. There's a couple of those here. That's not what's important, though. Okay, so you can the hike up here, that I've had challenges in my life. This is one of them. Okay, this is looking back into the cave. They've walled it off. You're not allowed to go back there. This was walled off 1,000 years ago. All right, but check this out. There's another ohm section. This is megalithic, by the way. All right, you ready?
Yes.
There's your portal. Okay, so this is what you do in this cave. 3 people sit here. 2 face out on their knees. You put your hands on the wall. This person sits facing this direction with one hand here, one hand here, and you say the magic words. Poof. And the locals there call this a portal. Their words,
I know it. Yeah.
not mine. This is one piece of rock. Now, I got to tell you, just to give you an idea, that is the top of the Andes Mountains right there. Okay, that's how high up you are. You can't even see, and it is.
Oh yeah, look at that step thing.
That's an irrigation system, right?
No, I mean on the rock, it's the it looks like a step. That's part of the energy that you find also in Machu Picchu and many places.
Called the hitching post to the stars.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
And so you hike up, and now I've got you hike up so high up into the mountains, and you round the corner. This is our indigenous shaman. You can see he's doing the ceremony here. His name's Wilco. This man here, freakishly cool and smart. Look at his eyes. And then when he's telling you, you just listen. What's that?
Sharp as an eagle.
Oh, I think he is an eagle. So there you go. You see how you put your elbows?
That's right.
Yeah. And
posture is repeated also in Egypt, raising the arms to touch the hands of the higher self. I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to say to our viewers, because this is real science, our work is published in Archaeologia, which is the publication of ENA, which is like the Smithsonian Institute.
To talk about the sound frequencies.
In 2017, they have a huge article where we look at all of the major pyramids in Yucatan with the music factors. So those of you who are serious archaeologists, musicologists, I highly recommend this. also our websites that you can go to, because there's just stacks of books and monographs connected with our colleagues that need to be understood as we bring together this greater synthesis.
And you also saw bodies. I know you saw one of those. And of course, that's what's popular right now in Peru, the Peruvian bodies connected with,
The elevated body of the human rising from the earth, rising into the new cosmic design. This is what is called the rapture. This is called by different traditions the mystical understanding of creation. The creation story, now it comes home into our hearts to realize we are the temple of divine spirit. We are reaching an age of higher vibration. We're working with the tools of remote viewing and remote sensing to realize underground passages do exist. And we're creating the new roadmap to the stars, recognizing in the birthright, the charter of our soul coming into physical reality in little Mother Earth, that we are connected with the cosmic family. A great design beyond Alpha and Omega. So we push forward and we rejoice that the divine spark within us is alive and well.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Genocide, for posting up the two key websites, and for everybody else, it's in the links below, keysofenoch.org and futurescience.org. Both links are below. We have them over on our website, throughout social media, and also right there in the chat room in real time. You can go and keep up with everything that the Hertaks are doing. I miss you guys, even though I was just hanging out with you a couple of weeks ago. But we've got to do this more often. You're the absolute very best. And I'm not kidding when I say you're the reason why I do what I do. So just thank you for everything. Okay? I really appreciate it. Much love.
Thanks, Jimmy. Bye.
The absolute
love all of you.
Now, go play me a song. I'll talk to you guys. Have a great day.
We have a CD that has some of the recording inside the Great Pyramid. So
Pyramidal Capstone. Go to our website.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that. And tell Halpern I said, yo, okay? I'll talk to you guys. Behave and be well. JJ and Desiree Hurtak right there. Thank you so much. What an excellent show. And the absolute very best. And I know I'm not kidding when I say this. They are the reason why I do what I do. It's really that simple. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow night. What am I doing tomorrow night? Does anybody know what I am doing tomorrow night? Tomorrow night I've got Martin Keller here. We're going to be talking about encounters of the fifth kind. That is tomorrow night. I want to thank Desiree and JJ Hurtak. Perfect show tonight. So much fun. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Dennis and Kevin and Bill and Genocide. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. And this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night with Martin Keller, go back Lee Tappy.